You were almost the missing paragraph in our earnings call, she says. You can be as invisible as you like so long as the language stays honest. Rafe smiles without showing teeth. Invisible is fine, he says. Results are louder. She takes out a pen, already writing the terms as she speaks them, because speed now serves sight. Day rate. NDA. Bilingual certification protocol. 30-day cure before any freeze. Non-exclusivity anchored by name. We will route through procurement by close. Rafe nods and adds the line that turns policy into shape. One boundary, he says. I am home by 3:30 for school pickup. If a meeting runs past that, we continue tomorrow. She nods once, accepts the boundary as a term, and writes it down in ink that will outlast the meeting. Home by 3:30. Day rate under NDA. Bilingual clause certification for every control paragraph going forward. She adds a 30-day cure before any freeze and anchors non-exclusivity by name. He signs the short form. Legal takes the longer draft to redline. Inside the room, Annex 12B returns to Senkaken, the footnote goes back where it belongs, and the heading stops pretending to be quality. Rafe spends the afternoon quietly productive, handing sentences to counsel that read the same in both languages and adding one small checklist the team didn't know it needed. He watches the interpreter land terms with their full weight and smiles once, private and slight, when the room stops reaching for cushions. At 3:10 he closes his notebook. At 3:15 he is in the elevator. At 3:20 he clears the lobby without hurry. At 3:30 he is where he promised to be. Outside the school, Isabel runs to him with a backpack that looks larger than it should. The blue paper crane peeks from his notebook like a corner of sky. Did the quiet sentence work? She asks, breath finding its pace. It did, he says. People listened. She considers that as if measuring a line with a ruler. Good, she says. Talking loud hurts my ears. They walk toward the corner. Leaves click along the curb like coins. He tells her the smallest version of the truth, that agreements are how people make their promises visible, that when language forgets people it becomes a trap, and that small words can bend big machines if you place them exactly. She nods, satisfied by geometry that fits inside a pocket. At the crosswalk they wait, side by side, hands matched. When the light changes, they step out together. Their pace is unhurried. The city keeps its weather. The crane rides the wind of their motion, and the day closes with enough room for both of them. They turn homeward together and let the afternoon quiet settle around them. The room is high enough that the city looks organized, even the traffic. Glass on three sides holds a pale morning and a river of roofs. Inside, the table is a dark runway lined with carafes, thin glasses, and name placards squared to the edge. Headsets rest beside each folder like sleeping instruments. Air carries a faint chill that keeps attention sharp. At the back, Rafael Moreno sits with a slim notebook open to a page held by a blue paper crane. Isabel folded it last night and tucked it there herself, solemn as a signature. He turns his watch one click to Tokyo time, feels the cuff brush the bone of his wrist, and lets the second hand find a new rhythm. He does not clear his throat. He does not introduce himself. Silence is the tool he brought that no one asked for. He watches staff adjust chairs by millimeters, swap a chipped cup for a perfect one, check the sound on channel 1 and channel 2. He notes who checks a reflection and who doesn't, who rehearses a smile and who keeps theirs for later. The folder spines face the door the way a stage faces an audience. The first team arrives in advance of their principals, lays pens straight, whispers through the agenda. Two interpreters confer in low voices, trading frequencies like chess moves. Rafe memorizes their voices, not their faces, and rolls the crane to mark annex tabs he has not yet seen. A calendar alert pings once and dies. The latch clicks, small as a throat clearing. Ava Chin enters with her team, precise in step and focus, momentum contained. Chairs rise and settle. Across the hall, the counterparties turn the corner and approach in a line, measured, composed, wearing the morning-like armor. An assistant intercepts Rafe at the threshold, tablet in hand and a smile that makes rules sound friendly. Backup interpreters usually wait in the anteroom, she says. If we need you, we will page you. Rafe glances past her to the long table and the paired placards, then back to the blue paper crane in his notebook, a small permission he carries. I was told to be in the room, he says. His voice remains low, unhurried. Martin Pike arrives with a stack of notes, and an opinion that precedes him. We do not need another opinion, he murmurs to no one and everyone. The schedule is tight. We have a deal to land. The assistant lifts her tablet like a shield. Ava steps in on the tail of the remark, focus pinned to the agenda, not the corridor. Who is this? Secondary language support, the assistant answers. Ava measures the cost of a discussion against the cost of a seat. Fine. He sits in the back. No interruptions. If I need you, I will ask. Rafe nods once. He planned not to speak. Silence is a good instrument when the song is complicated. He takes the chair at the rear corner where the view is wide and the angle allows both faces and hands. He sets the notebook on the arm, the crane marking a blank page, and adjusts his watch band until the second hand aligns with Tokyo time. He logs the seat order the way a cartographer notes, coastlines. Ava at point, Martin at her right, legal on her left, operations 2 down. Across the table, Takahashi accepts a cup with both hands, Counsel Saito observes rather than smiles. Their deputy keeps time with a pencil tap that tightens during price talk and relaxes at courtesy. Rafe listens to the greetings as if they are instruments being tuned. Honorifics land lightly, then a half beat heavy. The primary interpreter tests channels 1 and 2, breath steady, vowels precise. Folders thump onto the table. The interpreter clips in. Pens align, screens wake, and the room holds its breath together. Tea arrives in thin porcelain, steam lifting in slow curls that disperse before they reach the ceiling. Ms. Takahashi receives her cup with both hands, chin dipping a degree, the gesture practiced until it is not. Across from her, Ava mirrors with her own touch of china, a courtesy that costs nothing and earns more than nothing. Cups settle, the ritual closes. Business cards slide across the table with a reverence that belongs to this room and no other. Saito presents his card with the print facing forward, bowing by a margin so small it registers as warmth rather than formality. Ava accepts with both hands, reads the kanji, and places it beside her placard where it will stay visible until the meeting ends. Rafe watches the exchange from his corner, noting who treats the card as data and who treats it as a handshake with memory. Takahashi opens with a greeting that is deliberate and warm without softening. Her cadence is measured, each phrase arriving at a distance that allows the interpreter to catch it cleanly and render it before the next thought. The interpreter clips into channel 2, breath timed to the beat of her sentences, vowels precise. He is good. He is smooth. Rafe listens for what smooth might hide. Saito says little. He watches faces the way a pilot watches instruments, not with anxiety but with calibrated attention. When Martin offers a broad opening compliment, Saito accepts it with a nod that neither encourages nor discourages. His pen rests across his knuckles. Rafe maps the room as it breathes. Takahashi pauses a beat longer before discussing exclusivity than she does before discussing shipments. The interpreter softens edges where Japanese prefers certainty. Senkaku, priority, becomes priority right, which sounds like permission rather than architecture. A single word added, a courtesy, a cushion. Rafe writes nothing. He shifts the paper crane a centimeter to the left and keeps watching. Ava opens her portfolio and places the value proposition on the table. Northline's logistics reach, cold chain reliability, 3 years of on-time delivery above 98%. Timeframes surface. Penalties appear. The room sharpens. Binders open to annexes with colored tabs that promise order. Rafe turns the Japanese packet toward the light and lets his eyes settle on the red lines that run like thin capillaries along the margin. Annex 12B, small font, a careful change. Where the earlier draft used Senkaku, priority, this version carries Dokashoken, exclusive right. 1 character, 1 roof beam moving slightly, and the room below it changes shape. He does not underline it. He makes the note with his breath instead, a quiet measure he can find again. He watches the interpreter rather than the speaker. On price, the translation lands without delay. On territory, a half beat appears before words arrive in English, as if something small needs smoothing. The interpreter's gaze schemes Saito, then returns to Takahashi, and the line becomes priority right, an agreeable phrase that sounds like courtesy more than control. Rafe times the pauses to the second hand he set to Tokyo. The micro delays repeat on non-compete, on quality standard, on window. A rhythm forms, polite and precise, the kind you could almost forget was there. He keeps his pencil capped. Silence is a better instrument than marks when a pattern needs to declare itself without help. He slides the blue paper crane down the page until its point rests beside 12B. The crease stops exactly at the changed character, like a fingertip laid on a pulse. He rolls his shoulders once, as if preparing to lift something later. Not now. He counts the breaths between offers, registers the way Takahashi's hands settle when the translator reaches for softer nouns. At the head of the table, Martin leans toward his watch. "Let us close by lunch," he says, cheerful in a way that dares time to object. The schedule is the schedule. Ava weighs a warranty clause that reads minor and costs little on paper. She signals willingness to concede, moving a chip to by the hour. Rafe does not move. He lets the annex sit there, ordinary to every eye in the room but his, waiting for the exact moment to matter. He notes Sato's pen goes still, the interpreter's breath shorten, Ava's gaze narrow a fraction. The beam has moved. He files the angle. Numbers take the table like weather that cannot be argued with. 62 million across 3 years, tranches tied to volume and temperature integrity. Bonuses if lanes stay above 98%. Penalties arrive as quietly as the tea, 5% holdbacks, 10 if an alert flags and isn't cleared within 48 hours. One clause sits colder than the rest. If a quality dispute escalates past second review, both lanes freeze for up to 90 days while counsel sorts intent from accident. 90 days is not a pause, it is a quarter. Ava runs the math without moving. The cash curve survives a brief storm, not an ice age. Still, priority distribution feels safe, the English panels say so. She hears the word as access, not surrender, a lane that moves faster, not a door that locks. Across from her, Sato's pen rests. The interpreter's phrasing stays pleasantly neutral. No one says exclusive. The room prefers that silence. Rafe measures a different column. His thumb stays on Annex 12B where a single character has redrawn the room, Senkaken to Dokashoken, priority to exclusive right. In the model he carries in his head, that swap lifts 2 regions off the board, markets the company values at 85 million over the same horizon. The 90-day freeze multiplied by a misentered clause is not a legal nuance. It is guidance missed, covenants tested, a board call that tastes like metal. Martin wants noon to mean done. He leans into schedule as if it were leverage. "Close by lunch and we can brief investors by Friday," he says, smile bright enough to deny gravity. He calls a warranty revision. "Minor," agrees payment to time. Rafe doesn't look at him. He listens to the interpreter's half-beats, and watches Takahashi's hands settle when vague nouns enter the air. He waits because correction is a blade that fails when swung too early. When it lands once and lands clean, the room cannot reopen the wound without admitting it. Saito clears his throat with the softness of someone offering help that isn't labeled as such. Perhaps, he suggests, there is comfort in an added assurance of quality, a brief addendum to align standards and avoid confusion. A single page, no disruption. He slides a thin draft forward, polite as a gift. The header reads quality standard, a phrase that smiles while it builds a gate. It looks harmless in English, a cushion against defects. In the annex, paired with 12B, it becomes the lock that keeps every other door from opening. Rafe notes the hinge quietly. Rafe writes without commentary, 6 short lines that belong to no one's agenda. 917 territory clause, 0.6s delay, 924 non-compete, 0.7s, 931 window, 0.5s, 939 Annex 12B, 0.8s, 944 Quality Standard, 0.6s. 952 Remedies, 0.5s. At the bottom he prints one sentence, neat and calm, pattern of softeners on controlled terms. Please verify renderings. He folds the page once and slides it to the aisle. The assistant taking notes at the wall receives it with a question in her eyebrows. He gives a small tilt of his head that says only, forward. The paper lands by Ava's right hand between a carafe and her pen. She reads, doesn't look back, and leans the note toward the interpreter with a fingertip. He scans, nods, and his next sentence arrives with the spine straightened. Senkaken is rendered as priority, not right, and the air tightens a degree as if a window has closed exactly as it should. Rafe stays a shadow at the rear corner. Across the table, Takahashi sets her cup down after a careful sip, the kind of pause that comes from a small discomfort politely managed. He catches the flicker she hides, the way her eyes skip the creamer. On his way to refill the water pitcher he catches the attendant's glance and mouths a request. A minute later a small pitcher appears without label, pale and separate. He places it by Takahashi's saucer without claiming authorship. Her chin dips a millimeter, gratitude delivered in the language of non-interruption. The conversation warms by half a degree. The interpreter, now aware of his own delays, starts landing clauses with their full weight rather than their friendlier cousins. Sentences stop wearing cushions. The room's pace unclenches. The notes everyone writes become cleaner. Martin inhales as if to call time itself toward lunch. Let's not litigate semantics, he says, good-natured as a deadline. We all know what's meant. Rafe listens past the sentence for the hinge that follows meaning, the place where wording turns into beams and beams turn into load. He waits, hands still, for the moment that can carry the correction once, cleanly. And then waits. Rafe turns the Japanese annex beneath the light, and tracks the margin code with one finger, until 12B rests under his nail. The red line sits there, modest and certain, a single character that has moved a roof beam. He slides the blue paper crane down the page until its tip touches the altered kanji, a small, bright arrow that no one else can read from where they sit. He remains still. Across the table, the conversation returns to restraint. Counsel proposes a brief non-compete, limited in time, an amiable safety valve while the partnership finds its feet. The interpreter smiles it into English as a courtesy window, a phrase that leaves everyone at ease because it sounds like manners. Rafe listens to the glide of the word and measures the gap it hides. Courtesy cannot be enforced. Windows can close. Saito watches Ava while the interpreter works, eyes steady, pen balanced. Takahashi's hands remain composed, but her tea cools untouched. On the print in front of them, the annex threads the new word through territory and timelines, an elegant stitch that binds more than it admits. Rafe keeps his silence. Timing is the tool. The cut must be one clean line, not a series of nicks that harden the room. He flips 2 pages and back again, testing the seam for other stress points. Warranty cross-references 12B, remedies do as well. The architecture holds only if that beam stays where it belongs. The crane does not move. Ava glances at the clock, then at the list she promised herself she would not protect more than the deal. Priority distribution remains on the table, tidy and agreeable in English. She breathes once, deciding how much daylight to trade for certainty, and slides her pen a fraction toward the acceptance line. Rafe notes the distance the pen travels and does not speak. She nods toward the interpreter, ready to accept priority distribution to keep the schedule intact. As Ava's pen touches the line, Rafe speaks in Japanese, voice level, unhurried, as if reading from a map he drew himself. Senkaken wa sono mama de yukarimasu. Annex 12 BGA Dokashoken no mama nara, anatatachi ga taisho shita nai senio o motamura kodo nai naramesu. He does not repeat it. He does not clear his throat. The sentence hangs in air that forgets how to move. The interpreter blinks, a half-beat late, then renders it faithfully, the words landing without cushions. We can accept Senkaken as written, but if Annex 12B remains Dokashoken, you are asking for exclusivity you did not propose. Pen stop. The river of the city keeps going below, in here the current stalls. Rafe's hand rests on the annex where the blue paper crane points to 12B. In English, he adds, calm as before, that single character moves a beam. It converts priority into exclusive rights. It blocks 2 regions worth roughly 85 million over the horizon and invites a 90-day freeze if any quality dispute escalates. It slides today's guidance by a quarter. If the room intends priority, the annex must say Senkaken, not Dokashoken. He does not look at Martin. He does not look at the interpreter. He looks at Takahashi and Saito with the courtesy of someone naming a shared intention before it goes missing. If exclusivity is the ask, we can price it. If priority is the ask, we can sign it. But the language must match the promise. The interpreter's second rendering is cleaner than the first, as if relieved to be exact. Courtesy dissolves into clarity. Takahashi's palms settle flat on the folder, not defensive, not conceding, listening. Sato's pen lifts off his knuckles and waits in the air, a thin black metronome suspended between choices. Martin inhales to object and finds no purchase. Ava's eyes leave the schedule and find the annex, then his face. She looks at him for the first time as if he is in the meeting, not the room. The quiet is not empty now, it is a tool. Rafe does not fill it. This is not accusation, he says softly. It is alignment. Words are architecture. Move one beam and the roof shifts. If the house we are building together is meant to have windows on 3 sides, Annex 12B cannot nail them shut. Nothing creaks. The table holds. Eyes pivot to Saito, the person in the room who can turn understanding into action. Ava's pen stops its migration. In the stillness that follows, the deal changes shape. The interpreter's hands flatten near his console as if grateful for a map. Takahashi's gaze flickers to the annex. She traces the line once with a fingernail and leaves it marked only in memory. Somewhere below, a siren passes and fades. Inside, Saito draws breath to speak. At last. Rafe lifts a prior draft from his folder and lays it to the left of the current annex, squaring the pages until the margins rhyme. He lets silence hold while he draws a single line with his finger from header to header, then stops at the place where one roof beam moved. Here, he says softly. The earlier draft reads Senkaken. The new draft reads Dokashoken. One character. Different house. He does not circle it. He lets the room see the distance. He turns the sheet and finds the footnote that used to sit under the territory map. In the current annex, the note has migrated to the bottom of the page and lost the clause that tied it to non-exclusivity. The heading above it, once labeled Annex 12B, Territory Priority, now reads Annex 12B, Quality Control. He looks at Takahashi as he translates the courtesy back to structure. A new label does not change the beam it hides. In English, he names the consequence in money and time. If this remains exclusive, Northline loses 2 regions valued near 85 million over the term. If a dispute crosses second review, both lanes freeze up to 90 days. That is a quarter off your guidance and a call you cannot paper over. He returns to Japanese with the same calm. The house you intend has windows on 3 sides. This annex nails 2 shut. He sets a 1-page comparison on the table. Left column, prior draft. Right column, current annex. The swap is visible in a glance, the moved note beneath it, the retitled clause like fresh paint. He keeps the framing inside respect. We cannot accept exclusivity dressed as quality, he says, not loud, not sharp. If you want exclusive rights, we can price them. If you want priority, the annex must say priority. The interpreter renders both languages without cushions. Takahashi studies the sheet, then the old draft, then the blue paper crane that points to 12B as if a child's hand remembered what rooms need. Saito sets his pen down and folds his hands. 5 minutes, he says. The request is polite and complete. He gathers his team at the window. They bend their heads over the paper while the city keeps breathing beneath the glass. Ava leans back from the acceptance line she was about to sign and lets the air return to her lungs in measured increments, counting what almost happened and what still can. Her eyes stay on the annex, then shift to Rafe, and hold there, not with surprise but with recalibration, the look people wear when the map they carried is replaced by the ground beneath them. The counterpart team returns, the air around them reset. Saito takes his seat, folds his hands, and names it without theater. There is a discrepancy, he says. Our intent was Senkaku. The annex drifted. We will revert to priority and pair it with performance incentives, delivery integrity, response time, and quarterly fill rate bonuses. He inclines his head to Takahashi, who nods once and sets her pen where acceptance lives. Martin exhales like a man spared from thinking. We are overreacting to a character, he says, cheerful on purpose. Let's not let calligraphy decide revenue. The smile he aims slides off it. No one picks it up. Ava stays with the paper. The old header, the moved footnote, the new label. She can feel the roof beam now, the way one word moves load to a wall not built for it. She looks at Saito. Thank you, she says. The correction is noted. She looks at Martin next. Words are beams, she says, calm enough to be sharp. Move one, the roof shifts. We do not call that semantics. She turns to the man in the back for the first time as if he occupies a chair and not an alcove. Who are you? Rafe does not amplify himself. A consultant, today, he says. He leaves the rest unsaid because the work has already said it. Ava nods once, a decision landing. Legal, you take point on language, she says. Operations, own the bilingual certification. Control clauses are verified in both texts before signature. Martin, you are off point for this negotiation. Finance supports. It does not steer. He opens his mouth and then closes it. The instruction has already reached the floor. To the table, Annex 12B reverts to Senkaku. Strike the quality addendum as drafted or restated as a mutual performance paragraph with no territorial effect. Insert a 30-day cure before any freeze. Any pause applies only to the disputed lane. Anchor the footnote back to non-exclusivity. Drafts, please. Pens move, laptops lift their lids. The interpreter resets his channels to match the room's new spine. Ava closes her portfolio and stands. I'll be in the corridor, she says. The door opens on cooler air. A sentence waits there that doesn't belong to the contract. Outside the room, the air is a degree cooler. Ava closes the door behind her and does not waste the moment with small talk. I parked you in the back because the schedule felt like the safest thing to protect, she says. I let time outrank sight. That was an error. Thank you for stopping us before the floor shifted. Ray stands easy, notebook at his side, the blue crane peeking like a quiet witness. He does not capitalize the moment. You protected what you could see, he says. It happens. I only asked the paper to match the promise. Ava nods once, the motion crisp, relieved of performance. I want you engaged today, day rate under an NDA, she says. Help legal reset Annex 12B, restore the footnote, and rebuild the bilingual certification so control clauses cannot drift. If our post-meeting audit confirms what you've shown, I'll move for a short retainer to harden our templates and train teams. Official channels, clean terms. Rafe listens the way he listened in the room, for alignment before agreement. That's workable, he says. I'll hand the fixes to your counsel and operations lead, and I won't be the story. Ava's mouth softens by a degree, the kind of change that exists only where accuracy lives.